Welcome to our fifth and final faculty and stakeholder discussion. These have been really amazing this year, and doing it in this format where we just create a dialogue and get to meet new folks. And I'm going to give a quick also shout out to our research associate, Josh Sayers, who just defended their PhD.
Woo!
Yesterday, so congratulations on the success of that. So it's Dr. Sayers.
Ooh.
And okay, so really happy to introduce briefly our own Anoushae Eirabie. And Professor Eirabie is the only veteran of this studio, along with me, from last year, and whose work continues to grow and expand between the Hudson Valley and New York, and between art practice and material research, place-based pedagogy, and this school and others, and has done an amazing job connecting to the East Harlem landscape this semester, and also to folks like Marina Ortiz. And Marina, I've been familiar and aware of Marina for several years as a member of CD11 and an East Harlem resident. I also have my studio in East Harlem, El Barrio, and Marina's work and your media presence and your activism is well known in East Harlem through her organization, East Harlem Preservation, where you're really on the ground documenting what's happening in this very important special part of Harlem, and really advocating for preservation in an expansive way that connects to the kind of local history of this place and the future. Mm-hmm. So it's really an honor to have you be part of this project.
Thank you.
All right. Take it away.
Hey, hi guys. Anoushae Eirabie, nice to see all of you again. So I'm gonna share a presentation relatively quickly because I'm sharing the floor with Marina, and it's just gonna talk through some of the things that I have worked on, that I am working on, some of the themes that I am exploring, and some of the things that inspire me. And it's kind of just an evolving thing. So I guess it starts at, I moved to Canada when I was like 5.5 years old, and I grew up in a suburb in Brampton. Then I somehow went to Carleton University to study history, and I got caught up in architecture. And I did that, and I graduated in around 2015. So I really have been working professionally now for about a decade. And so I guess this is a good way to show just all the sorts of things that I've been involved with over the past 10 years. And I think the point that I like to make when I show this is I really like to do things simultaneously so that I get perspectives from all the things that I'm working on all the time. And when I come to a new task, I have this like constant buzz in my head about all the different conversations that I've been having with people. And I hope to continue working in this way. So after I graduated, I went off to London and I worked at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill for like 2.5 to 3 years. And I was surrounded by an incredible community of people. I drew this illustration of the 4th floor of the Broadgate Tower for them when I was leaving because they helped me through so much, and it was a huge learning curve for me. It was the first job that I had outside of school. So I learned how to build buildings, but I also learned about all these design phases and what they meant to a project and construction. And yeah, it was just an incredible like learning curve. But after about 1.5 years working there, I was sort of starting to question things, and my anxiety started growing about what exactly I was doing there and what I was making there. And throughout the design phases that I was working in, I was drawing these projects and building models of these projects that I didn't quite, I felt like I was a little bit disassociated with what that meant in the actual built environment. And having now lived in London for 1.5 years, my first time living in a big city, and actually experiencing on the ground what that meant, I started to really question, okay, what is it that I'm making, these absolutely enormous projects, what weight do they contain when they actually come to life somewhere? So that one on the end over there is a project that I worked on when I started at SOM, and it actually was just completed a couple of years ago. It's in Sweden. It's a really tall tower. So simultaneously while I was working there, I was also reading, and I was becoming more aware of what I was interested in. And I think this is a quote that really it's carried me a little bit through these different decisions that I've made. So what exactly are we sustaining when we talk about sustainability? An intrinsically out of control system that sucks in gray goo at one end and pushes out gray value at the other. And I think people in my generation, or I guess designers in my generation and even in yours, we're surrounded by these crises, right? Like the climate crises, the housing crises, the economic crises, the financial crises, like all these crises. And I think when I read this book, it was sort of like, oh, are these systems that are bigger than all of us, sort of our own making? How do we position ourselves in them? What do we want to see out of them, right? So reading things like Timothy Morton, while also sitting in a room designing, glass towers and wondering how to make them sustainable was a bit of a thing for me. I was like losing my mind a little bit, but anyway. And then, reading people like Donna Haraway as well, right? This is a really a quote that's, again, really stuck with me. Staying with the trouble requires making oddkin. That is, we require each other in unexpected collaborations and combinations in hot compost piles. We become with each other or not at all. And I think this is a kind of collaboration she's describing that's incredibly messy. It's not clean. It's not clinical and cold the way that I was making spaces when I was working in a corporate office. So at this moment of an identity crisis, I went back to school. So in 2018, I went to Columbia to take on a master's, and I was really intent on exploring these ways of working that were maybe on the other side of the office. So if I was isolated in an office at SOM, I wanted to know what it was really like working with the community. How did people actually understand how things were made in their communities? How do they advocate for them? How did I become part of that process? And so I think at Columbia, I was able to kind of approach this in a really open way, and I learned from incredible figures from all over the world, like Parveen Rahman in Pakistan, about using shared tools and shared processes and working in these really diverse ways. And I was even able to, unpack economic and agricultural systems and environmental systems and start to question what those things look like if I started changing elements of them. So comparing how they act now versus how they could maybe act in the future. And I was able to, experiment with material processes and work with both synthetic and natural materials to really get an understanding of, okay, if I changed the way I'm making with what I'm making with, how does that change my process? How does that change an outcome, right? So really just exploring fabrication and materials at school was really a lot of fun too. Again, this is not the best quality image, but I loved this project. It was, again, just really alien ways of creating spaces, but also working incredibly collaboratively with a bunch of people to create these objects, and really the only thing that was that we needed to figure out was how to work together. That was interesting to me. And then, finally, I guess in a way, my goal was to be able to take what I was doing in a classroom and get it out into the world somehow while I was still in school. So taking things that I was working on in a studio and then, applying for a competition with a friend to prototype these objects to maybe create a kind of collective mural during COVID times and take it and bring it to Newburgh and see what that looked like when it was actually installed in community. So it was a really fun kind of moment for me to take something I was working on in school and bring it to life while I was still in school. And so, I was doing all that and I was working in those ways, and I graduated in 2022. And because I had so much experience at that point in fabrication and experimentation, an artist, Torkwase Dyson, who exhibited at Columbia one summer, who I worked with just briefly, she reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to join her team to build big sculptures. She had a series of really big commissions. And I thought, okay, this is a great opportunity to stop and think about what it might mean to design a process with an artist. And so I went full all in. And I think Torkwase's practice is it's so widespread. I think one thing you should know about artists is that they pull from a body of research, right? Like they have a very extensive body of research that they're constantly questioning and pulling from and using to edit their own worldviews. And so how do you actually become a part of that process and expand it even to include different types of deliverables that neither of us knew what the scale might be of those things. So I brought what I knew how to do, right, to that practice, and we experimented together. We were using all sorts of different digital and analog tools to build things, and some of these are the ones I'm going to show you now. But this was at Counter Republic Triennial. It was a massive sculpture, just really incredible, and you know, just working in models and then actually seeing these things being built simultaneously while you're working in models. In the art world, things happen really quickly, so it's a little bit different from architecture, where things take a longer time for you to see materialize. In the art world, it's kind of really fast. It has to be. Sometimes it's too fast, and I have to be there building with them. So cutting things out on site and actually putting this thing together, and talking to builders about like how to actually build something. The builders that we were using here in St. Louis, they were building houses, you know, and then they looked at this thing that we gave them. They were like, "What is this? Like, how do I cut a circle? Like, what do you want me to do here?" So we had to, like, you know, work with them a little bit, and it was fun to work in that way with people who are so used to their own craft, and just creating these really like absolutely lovely contemplative spaces for the community to use, spaces that really made you stop a little bit and think about what it was that you were experiencing. And yeah, just absolutely gorgeous. Another one was Bird and Lava. This is the same series of work, but it was a very different approach and a different object that was created. Much more an object than a space, I'd say. So my task was really to figure out how to do this in the studio with 3 people. We engineered it, we fabricated it, we built it, and then we installed it in the space ourselves, and that meant a lot of like weird moments in the studio with me trying to like get this thing to work. It did eventually. That was great. Nervous the whole time, but I think it created a really beautiful space, or not a really beautiful space, but a really beautiful object in this space. And this was at T Space in Rhinebeck. Another one that's quite big. It was probably the biggest thing that I've done with her so far, but this was at the Whitney Biennial, and because it was the first thing that was this big on this terrace at the Whitney Museum, it just required a lot of like thinking through digitally, and then also you know, in models and working things out and mocking things up. Trying to get all these things to actually fit on a terrace was always an interesting task for us. Working with everyone from curators. This is Meg Only at the Whitney. She's really lovely. They're really lovely. And Manny, the contractor, who, again, these people who are so used to building things in their own ways then come to a process that's so different. And you have to be able to communicate. And I guess what the shared thing is that we both don't know what's going on. So we both have to communicate about how to build something to a level that the artist is going to be able to accept, right? And you know, some of the behind the scenes, that's me up there installing the last stone slab. That was a lot of fun. I was the project manager on this, and it was stressful. Like, it was like a little bit crazy, the timeline. It was my first time project managing, and it was just you just had to be really aware of all the moving parts on site. So super, again, just a very beautiful experience. And I think things like this you can't quite understand in a photo. You really have to be there and take the weight of these things in. Some of them are elevated just slightly. This is the way that Torkwase was practicing, right? I mean, we're talking about a practice that encompasses everything from, what did I write here? You know, material ecologies and infrastructure to liberation and the way like black bodies move through space. Like, these are very divergent themes that I think require experience. So this was just one of those moments. And then one of the more recent ones we worked on was the one at Brooklyn Bridge Park. I think it was just recently dismantled. but incredible. And at this point now that my contract with her is formally I've moved on, but we're still sort of working together digitally a little bit. So my responsibilities are a lot more into modeling these things with her. At this point, she sort of understands a process that she's adapted. So we move on, right? We move on to how other people start making things when she understands how they work. And yeah, we kind of come to this point. And now, what am I doing right now? I think this is a good quote to help you understand where I am at and what I'm doing. So when I was at school, Lindsay Wickstrom mentioned something about construction always demanding extracting, moving, transforming matter from one place to another. Typically this movement deteriorates the environment in one place and improves the quality of life in another. And I think I'm interested not just in literally physical matter, but also spaces, thinking about spaces interchangeably and how to create spaces that are places that you want to pause in and not just places that you need, right? It's not just about 6 walls and a room for me, right? It's really about how to create things that are contemplative. So I've done this, I'm kind of doing this in 2 different ways. I simultaneously am working with a lot of my friends in Europe and across the world on all sorts of experiments and ideas about how to work with materials and material ecologies that we're interested in, local materials, natural materials, but then also doing these really, really community-based projects in Newburgh where I live and working in historic preservation at the firm that I'm at. So this is just examples of projects that I've done with a few friends. And again, really contemplative spaces that I think we're trying. And sometimes they're successful and sometimes maybe they need to be worked out a little bit more, right? But I think it's really important to us not necessarily to win these competitions, but to just continue to circulate these ideas about what it means to work with these sorts of natural materials. Another one that we did in Norway with CLT, right? And just trying to get this wood everywhere, into the floor, into the ceilings, into the walls. What does it mean when this material moves the way it does in this way? How do you curate these spaces? Another one that's close to my heart, a school in a community in Sicily, and it's located in an area that's kind of divided. So kids from the school would all kind of be coming to one place to go to school. So how do you make spaces within them that support that kind of environment? Yeah, really just thinking through these things, always fun. A project that I did with a firm here in New York, in Brooklyn, community garden, and the task really was how to design this so that everyone could work on it together from design to construction. And I made this little gift with the CNC files. But seeing how these things would come together, it was really exciting to see this project come together immediately. And then working with those community partners as well and seeing them enjoy the space, or enjoy their space after the bench was there, was also really rewarding. And then in Newburgh, I like to always take a moment and every few, months or years or whatever, and pause and think about what the heck it is that I'm actually doing. And I come up with these crazy maps that are sometimes living in different pages of my sketchbook, but I think I encourage everyone to do this once in a while. Just stop and be what am I doing? In Newburgh, what that's meant now is I'm working on this really exciting project called the Tool Library, and it's the goal originally is to get free tools to people because there's so many artists who live in Newburgh, and there's so many people who are renovating homes and dilapidated architectures in Newburgh and restoring spaces in Newburgh. So there's lots of tools circulating, right? And there's lots of people in need of tools as well. So we want to be able to create a tool library, but how do we go about that in the most community-centric way possible, right? You have to be able to build this project with your stakeholders, with the neighborhood. How do you do that? To us, that means we just are constantly engaging with everyone at all scales. So through a festival called Archtober Newburgh, which is something a nonprofit that I work for in Newburgh organizes every year, we bring these groups together, groups of people, and these are our neighbors, right? And we circulate ideas about how things might work, who's available to help build, what tools everyone has, and what everyone's interested in. I think this was fun too. This was a group that I was doing a walking tour with. They're all youth. They're all like high school students or younger people. But even there are stakeholders of a tool library, right? Because they are either going to use it, or they're going to become librarians, or they're going to, volunteer, or they're going to use tools to make something in their own neighborhoods. It's just everybody. So how do you engage all these people all across the board all the time? That's the task. That's what we're working on. And so we've done one project so far, which has been we've gotten a site on Chambers Street, and we've managed to plant trees on there. That was a hurdle, but it was something that we went through with all our neighbors together, and it was a tool library project, even though we don't have a tool library yet. So that's important, that it's not just about physical exchange of tools, it's about coming together and working together. We got this project grant, so this is totally my idea because I'm totally into the whole natural buildings thing. But I got together with my team, and I was like, what if we built this tool library out of natural materials? That could be really cool because it means we need to forage these materials, we need to build these modules, we need to prepare our site. These are all things that we can get everyone to participate in with us together. So it's not just us, the team, building the library, and then people coming to the library. It's everyone building the library together and then being excited about this product and then wanting to use it, So this is a pretty radical idea about, growing biomass on the site, but we'll see. I mean, we're in the process of trying it right now, but we'll see if it works. And this is just the idea for the module, like what are these foraged materials, how might they come together, and all the other things that we need to work out. And then this is just a video that we posted recently of the progress so far. So we are ready to go. And so that's me, and I'm going to hand it off to Marina now.
I'm with East Harlem Preservation, which was founded in 2004. I want to thank you for falling in love with my neighborhood this semester, and hopefully you'll come back to stay. We were founded to preserve the neighborhood's history and diversity, and by preservation we mean more than just buildings, landmarks, although we do support that. We also mean people and what it means to be a community, what it means to be East Harlem traditionally, and not so much, it's predominantly Black and Puerto Rican and Asian, and then still more now recently being gentrified. So it doesn't necessarily mean fighting against those demographics changing, but honoring our ancestors, the people who contributed to the neighborhood and made it what it was and is. We do a lot of work with community activists, educators, and artists. Have a very popular website, and we collaborate with other groups such as City College to develop sound community-based alternatives in East Harlem and elsewhere. I have a small board of directors, all women. Yay!
This is supposed to work, but oh, there you
Okay.
go.
So, no, I don't think that's the next one.
That's not the next
No.
one. Sorry.
Okay,
There you go.
Okay, so the history of people in East Harlem. As you know, we are living, standing on stolen land. That was first settled by Europeans in 1687, then remained rural through the early 19th century until the development of the Metro-North Railroad, which was built by German, Irish, Scandinavian, and Eastern European Jewish laborers who emigrated to help build the streets, the gas lines, and the sewer lines. So East Harlem, as you probably noticed when you visited, is not made up of, it's not as splendid as some of the buildings in Central Harlem. Mostly tenements, historically tenements. Again, it was because that's where the immigrants who were working to build Manhattan, Harlem, Upper Manhattan lived. And immigrants, poor. Italian immigrants mostly arrived in the 1870s. After a trolley contractor imported them as strike breakers. So you see the shanty town along the East River at 106th Street was the beginning of East Harlem's Italian neighborhood. If you go there today, in August you could see the Giglio Feast Festival. So Pleasant Avenue is kind of turfy, right? So Pleasant Avenue is still considered pretty much Italian section of East Harlem. And so they have a lot of festivals and during the summer there, and they come in. Although not a lot of them live there now, they come back to visit and celebrate. But basically, it's been an affordable neighborhood for many generations. And up into the 1980s, early 90s, when gentrification started all over, African Americans have been consistently present since the 1630s. What we do in East Harlem is, again, preservation. So one of the ways that we mark our history, our ancestors, is with street dedications. So it's sort of a way of planting our flag and saying we were here and we did this. And, so we've been home to people like Langston Hughes, Biddy Thomas, Julia de Burgos, Cicely Tyson, Al Pacino, Marx Brothers, Marian Anderson, Tupac, Mark Anthony, and political pioneers such as LaGuardia, Vito Marcantonio, Oscar Garcia Rivera, and one of my community partners in crime, Debbie Quinones, has been very active in that street co-naming. And this year we will be marking the unveiling of Dice Pagan, who is a former political prisoner, grew up in East Harlem. She's gonna have her street unveiled on 107th and Lexington Avenue. It'll be Dice Pagan Place. And we're also going to create a mural in that same corner to honor her. And Biddy Thomas, who I mentioned before, author of Down These Mean Streets, he's gonna have a street named after him unveiled this year as well. Mm-hmm. So murals is another thing that we do in East Harlem to talk about our history. Back in the 70s, when East Harlem was burning and being abandoned, a lot of the buildings were, local folks got together and started homesteading and rebuilding the buildings, taking them over. Finally, the city gave them the opportunity to own those buildings, and that's how there's a lot of nonprofit organizations like Hope Community and a lot of HDFC's buildings that were built back then. And groups like Hope Community had historically lent their buildings to be used as canvases for local artists. So we have a lot of blank walls in East Harlem still, because there's still a lot of empty lots and community gardens that some of them, were created there out of those empty spaces. So we have a lot of murals, like the one Spirit of East Harlem, which is 4 stories tall, was created in the 70s by a local artist, Hank Pressing. And the people depicted in that mural are folks who lived on that block while he was painting the mural. So we had the folks playing dominoes, the butcher, the ladies looking out the window, that sort of thing. Julia de Burgos is a mosaic that was created on 106th Street that I was very much a part of organizing to put together. It was when we were renaming 106th Street in honor of Julia de Burgos. She is a Puerto Rican poet who lived and died in East Harlem. She was from Puerto Rico, but when she came to New York, she became ill and died, and was temporarily buried in Potter's Field until folks in Puerto Rico found out that she had passed. And she is the poet emeritus of Puerto Rico. And we love her in East Harlem because so much that we have a cultural center dedicated to her on 106th Street in Lexington. And we have a boulevard, 5th Avenue to the river, 106th Street is Julia de Burgos Boulevard. And while we were petitioning for that street co-naming, there was a wall that was had a mural by James de la Vega, who is an artist from East Harlem, that was painted over. And I said to Hope Community, what did you do? You have to fix this. You have to do something to make up for this. And because we were doing the Julia de Burgos street co-naming, I said, let's do a mural of Julia de Burgos. And we brought on Manny Vega, who is another East Harlem artist. You see, I think you saw a lot of his work with the mosaics. And he said, I don't want to do a mural, I want to do a mosaic. And I don't want to do it on the space that was painted over because there are garbage cans there and I don't want to dishonor her. So he took a wall on the side and he created a mosaic, and I was a part of that, and I was really proud. When we unveiled it, like, we had hundreds of people coming from all over, not just the city, but from the tri-state area. Members of her family were there, students from local schools were there, and I was just really proud. You know, we had music, we had speakers, the streets, folks were like, took over the street. And, you know, you mentioned art before. It is fast, but I gotta mention this, it's not depicted here, but tomorrow, April 17th, will mark the 9th anniversary of the removal of the statue of Marion Sims from 5th Avenue. Marion Sims was a white Southern doctor who experimented on African women and their infants without anesthesia. And for many years, his statue was on 5th Avenue. We fought for 10 years to have the statue removed. And tomorrow will mark the 9th year of the removal, and we're still waiting for a replacement. So art doesn't always happen fast. You know, the New York City's Department of Cultural Affairs Percent for Art program it's not happening fast enough. But it's moving forward, and hopefully within a year or so we'll have a beautiful replacement. Unfortunately, I don't have it depicted here, but go to our website or contact us for more information. Mm-hmm. The Dos Alas mural is another favorite of mine, depicting Don Pedro Avicio Campos and Che Guevara on 105th Street. It's been there for 25 years, created by an independent group without permission, and somehow it survived 25 years without vandalism for the most part. But a few years ago, there were a group of Cuban Americans who came up from Miami, discovered the mural and said, no way. And they kept defacing Che Guevara's face on the right. And we just kept coming back and restoring it 7 times in 2 years. I think they finally decided that, you know, but when we restored it, it was, and when we create these murals, it's a community process. So it's not just an artist coming in and slapping something on the wall. We'll invite the community to pick up a brush and, you know, help paint the flag colors, and, you know, have music, spoken word, and people will stop by and give their 2 cents. You know, I like that. Well, I don't understand. Who's that? You know, and we can have conversations with the neighborhood. So when people saw it being defaced and we were repairing it, they expressed their concern. You know, how dare they? This is our mural. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, this has not been touched since then. And a lot of the murals in East Harlem remain pretty okay. There's a community garden on Lexington Avenue that unfortunately is closed, but it's a beautiful portrait based on Frida Kahlo's, one of her famous portraits. It's Frida Kahlo on the left and Julia de Burgos on the right. And it's called Soldaderas, soldiers, sisters in crime. And it's beautiful. 107th Street, I also had the good fortune to help update a mural on political prisoners, this one being Oscar Lopez Rivera, while we were part of a campaign calling for his release, which Obama finally did on the last month of his term. Oscar Lopez Rivera is a Puerto Rican political prisoner who served 35 years in prison for, quote, seditious conspiracy, which means nothing, no real, like, no evidence, it's conspiracy. Okay. So we love our murals. I love my murals. And I'm going to be working on the one for Dicia Pagan, who was one of Oscar Lopez's partners in, quote, crime. And again, I can go on and on, but we're not going to do that today. So, again, East Harlem has been historically one of the go-to places for affordable housing for generations of African Americans, newly arrived Irish, Jewish, Italian immigrants, and now it's the home to many Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, and Asians. And you see the folks here doing what they do, protesting gentrification, playing dominoes on the fire escape, dancing salsa and bomba in the summer. We love our music, and we have a lot of music festivals, weekly music festivals in various parks, playing everything from salsa to disco. It's very much an active community of people. We just love music and art. So let's talk about displacement. Where did it begin? Where does it end? Never. So East Harlem, back in the day, in the 60s, I believe, there were a process called urban renewal, where the government just decided, we want this because we're going to build something, quote, better. So a lot of the older tenements, which, were really not in great shape, were seized and torn down through eminent domain. And rezoning is one other way where people are displaced or pushed out in the name of creating something better, right? Mm-hmm. So people have historically fought back in East Harlem, affordable housing movement. Like I said, in the 70s, taking over buildings, sweat equity, Mitchell Lama programs. So we've been doing that and continue to do that. Mm-hmm. And we're still fighting for, there's still a lot of city-owned property that people have been fighting to be turned over to nonprofit or community land trust. So like I said, there was a lot of homesteading, and these are the buildings that were burned out and turned into HDFCs, cooperatives. And so in terms of documenting preservation efforts in East Harlem, the first recorded initiative was by Ralph Christian, coordinator with the American Association for State and Local History. In 1979, he applied to the National Register of Historic Places and got them to designate a large section of East Harlem as an historic district. Oh no, it was rejected, sorry. There were no other major preservation efforts initiated until the long-abandoned Washburn Wire Factory, located near the East River, was sold to a retail mall developer in 1996. Today, if you go there, it is the East River Plaza Mall. We fought for almost 10 years to not have a mall placed on Pleasant Avenue, which is, like I said, it's an Italian, still very much an Italian, has an Italian identity, but it's mostly brownstones and townhouses. And then they slapped a mall up behind these places on the river. And so we fought against that mall, but we were not successful. I boycotted that mall personally for 10 years until they brought in an Aldi's that I couldn't resist. So, but we did manage to get Target out of there, okay? And then again in 2002, Raymond Plumet, who is a local architect and preservationist, he joined with Pleasant Avenue stakeholders to form the Business Residents Alliance of East Harlem, which was the primary organization fighting against the development of the mall. That's an article on the bottom there that I wrote for a local newspaper. Back in the day, we had local newspapers in East Harlem. They filed lawsuits, but they were not able to keep the to have the Washburn Wire Factory preserved. And again, so rezoning and gentrification is always another way that the communities get erased, right? And East Harlem buildings have averaged between 5 and 10 stories. But now New York City decided that they wanted to allow buildings up to 35 stories in East Harlem. If you go there, again, the buildings are 5, 6, 10 stories max, but now more and more you see a lot of skyscraper type things. Our median income is $87,000 for a family of 4, okay? And that's the area median income, which includes Westchester County. And so, but the average income in East Harlem is now, I think, $35,000 and going up. So a lot of us are not eligible to apply for these, quote, affordable units that are being built, right? So what did we do? We joined with other activists throughout the city to fight against rezoning. And we did demonstrations at City Hall, we did demonstrations at City Planning, we did demonstrations during the vote. We also took over the community board meeting, and we stopped the vote for the rezoning of East Harlem in 2017. We literally got up on the stage and prevented them from voting. So they tried to do a paper vote, and I called them out and said, nope, that's illegal, because it's the public meetings law. So then they were forced to consult with the borough president, and then they had another meeting where he said, yeah, you're right. So let's have a meeting and the votes, but we weren't, we didn't disrupt. We did, we sang songs and things like that, but we didn't prevent the vote. So the vote went through, and unfortunately the community board always votes yes with conditions, which just kind of relinquishes your power. Even though community board the community board doesn't have any legal authority, it's just an advisory body, so they don't really have any, power. But to say yes with conditions kind of, there's a member that was there for like 30 years, once said, you want to vote no with conditions, so that if they get your approval, it's based on your asks, right? And I think, they've kind of learned to do that a little bit, maybe. So the bottom photo was one of my favorites when we went to City Hall and they were voting. We partnered with the Justice Center in El Barrio. We collected over 3,000 petition signatures in East Harlem. We asked residents, well, what do you think? Is this a good idea to build 35-story buildings here? And so we collected over 3,000 signatures. We taped them together, and we unfurled them in the balcony at City Hall while they were doing the vote. And of course we were kicked out, but you know what? It was fun. And again, we do the protests in front of the elected officials' offices, at the community board meetings. They're bilingual, we're bilingual, right? We had community artists who do murals, temporary murals. This was Guerrilla Gallery on 116th Street. They would do paint the sheds for construction on, behind where empty lots are, right? The green walls. And so they would paint them over with different themes, and the theme during that vote was Trojan horse, meaning that the promises that are made for, under rezoning, they don't benefit the community. And I think we're seeing that now, where the buildings that are going up are not affordable, and that's a phenomenon all over the city and all over the country, as you know. What's affordable, what is it, $110,000 you have to have for a, quote, affordable unit in New York? So granted, it's working in the community. We're very much a part of the community. We're small, but what we do is we work with other groups that are doing similar work. So we give them space and promotion and whatever resources we have available online, or creating posters. This is a young woman from NYCHA, when we did a tour of NYCHA with Community Voices Heard, to showcase the bad living conditions and the promises that unfortunately to today still exist. We have this is some of my photography, showcasing how we can't. Yep. And so one of the other ways that we fought back was by creating a community land trust, which is a different model for community ownership of properties and places. And we had to really fight with the city to make that happen. There is one in the Lower East Side, Cooper Square, that has been in existence for 50 years. So the buildings are owned by the community, by the tenants, and they can set the rates and, do retail on the bottom to pay the difference so that everybody can live affordably. So I worked with the Community Land Trust in East Harlem, and they were given 4 buildings by the city under Melissa Mark Viverito's term. She was a city council person then, and so they have 4 buildings that they've been renovating. These are buildings that were in really bad shape, and so what they've done is move the tenants from one building to another to renovate, and then bring them back home. So we have folks who've been living in the same building for over 30 years, who have the right to stay and right to return at an affordable rate, a truly affordable rate. And they want to expand, obviously. And this is an idea that also caught fire all over the city and country. We studied the earlier methods in Detroit, Boston, really successful programs. And now every neighborhood that has been subject to rezoning has its own community land trust group. So hopefully the city will recognize that as an alternative to just handing city-owned land over to private developers and falling into that whole development trap. We also do work to preserve buildings, and we had the People's Churches campaign. And on the top left is the Our Lady Queen of Angels Roman Catholic Church, which was closed by the Archdiocese on February 12, 2007. And it was a church that the parishioners really wanted to keep open. There were a group of parishioners who presented the Archdiocese with a sound financial plan. The Archdiocese rejected it. So these senior women, 5 senior women who had never done any kind of activism in their life, decided to stay in the church and occupy it overnight. And they were gently arrested the next day and brought out. But they fought for years to get the Archdiocese to change their mind, to turn over the church to the community. And the Archdiocese has consistently refused. The church remains closed to this day. But every Sunday morning to this day, since 2007, the parishioners gather outside of the church and they do their own morning service around 11 a.m. if you go every single Sunday, whether it's 2 or 3 or 12 or 20, they're there still, protesting in their own way. There were 3 women who passed away who were part of that campaign. They passed away after that campaign started, and with their family and their permission, the funerals had to be held outside of the church, on the street, on the sidewalk, because the Archdiocese still refused to open the doors to the community. And, that's part of a pattern of the Catholic Church in particular, all over the country, as you may know, but especially in East Harlem. I think we've had 4 churches in total closed by the Archdiocese, and in many cases sold to developers. And I'm not going to say why they're selling off, where the money is going or whatever, but we know. On the top right is the People's Church, which many of you are probably familiar with. It is the first Spanish United Methodist Church, first Spanish-speaking Methodist church in the U.S., and it was here in East Harlem, and it still exists today. It's where the Young Lords took over the space when they wanted to create breakfast programs like the Black Panther Party did, and the church refused them back in the 70s, and they took it over. And since then, there's been sort of an agreement between the administration, the Methodist Church leaders, and the community, so that there's still a lot of good programs going on there. Acupuncture every other Saturday during the spring and summer. Food distributions on Sundays, clothing distributions, all kinds of good stuff. So we've supported, there's a picture of the Young Lords during the takeover. We've supported efforts by local parishioners to preserve their houses of worship whenever endangered and not always successful. Another way we work to preserve affordability and community is by landmarking. So we have a sister organization called Landmark East Harlem that has helped to landmark quite a few buildings in East Harlem, but also create a historic district that was first attempted by Mr. Christian in '79. They managed to create a historic district around the Pleasant Avenue area, 116th Street, and I think there's work, they're working to expand that. And also the Harlem folks are doing something uptown on 25th Street. We have, I think it's more than 25 designated landmark buildings. There's the Julia de Burgos Latino Cultural Center down at the bottom there. As I said, we love Julia de Burgos. Museum of the City of New York. And we've partnered with local universities, including Columbia University. They did a beautiful study of that 116th Street corridor, Pleasant Village, and now your school. This landmarks plan has been approved. And yeah, that's it. So I am, I'm always in the community. I think many of you visited La Maqueta as well. We're trying to get a spot in La Maqueta so that we can, for the first time, have a place where people can come find us. We've never had an office. We've only been doing work, online and in your face, various public events. So I invite you to visit our website and Instagram and sign up to find out what we're doing next in the community. And thank you for inviting me.
Any quick questions for either speaker?
Yes.
Thank you both so much for this wonderful presentation. I have one question for each of you. Anoushae, I think it's just really beautiful showing your trajectory over time and what that looks like to get to a point where you are creating like these amazing public art projects. You don't just jump into it. You have to build this like resilience and understanding and diving into techniques. And in particularly, we're all the students are about to embark on creating these large-scale fabrications, and some may be feeling nervous about what is my first step? How do I even plan to prepare myself? If you can just share what that looks like to prepare yourself. I mean, you showed some drawings of like exploded axons and whatnot, but what are some steps that they can take to take ideas from a model in your hand to these large scale? And then I forgot your name. Marina. Again, we're about to have this amazing activation in Harlem, and it's an opportunity to sort of like send a message or have a collective message as we're activating this space. And I think it's beautiful in your presentations, you show like art as a tool for activism while you're also activating a space. And I would love to hear from you, what are some like key messages that you think would be important for us to promote as we're activating the space in King Towers?
Oh, do you want to go first?
Messages. I'm really happy to hear about the mayor's plan to create a public market in La Maqueta. One of the things during the semester, the midterm presentation, I was, expressing frustration that there's so much of the space that's designated as La Maqueta that's not being utilized. So I'm really welcoming that plan, but we very much want to be a part of the community conversation about what goes in there. Not so much public market, but I definitely support that. So I don't have to walk all the way over to Aldi's, right? So, but I think it presents a great opportunity for us, for the community folks, from folks all over the community to come. Because what they usually do is have charrettes and designing sessions and things like that, where they want to hear from folks. And I want to make sure we inject art into that. If you look at what's being, the MTA really kind of destroyed part of La Maqueta while they were repairing, because it's over the the Metro North. But when they created these big ass columns, these cement columns, there's like to hold up the new tracks. And I said to the manager, I said, we need some murals here, okay? So we're gonna conspire to create murals all over these ugly concrete slabs that they just left there, they built them. So message being that whatever you build, whatever you do, when you come to El Barrio, one, talk to people, ask them what they like, what they want, what they hope for. Too often we get a lot of, honestly, like reporters will call, and sometimes students, and they want to do an interview, they want to find out what's happening, but they won't come to the neighborhood, right? So they want to talk by phone. So I really invite all of you to, not just do like when you're acting, I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but do go beyond that to spend a lot of time in East Harlem. I have your back if you feel like you need that.
Back up.
But yeah, recognize and honor our ancestors, our art, just a wonderful history that we have. Like East Harlem, everybody knows Harlem, right? Harlem Renaissance. I mean, Harlem's got great history, but East Harlem not so much. And so we're always trying to toot our horn and teach people. Like I said, with the Sim statue, we've been working. There was a presentation made at the Museum of the City of New York and Department of Cultural Affairs. The artist said to Department of Cultural Affairs, I've been waiting 7 years. What's going on? Yeah, this takes process, this takes time. But we went up there and we asked that question, and then people asked follow-up questions, and so it helps to push. And what she's bringing in is an image of a black angel, with medical staff, and her dress is going to be showcasing names and faces of the women that were exploited, killed, tortured. So we very much want that kind of thing. Like there is a Manhattan storage that was set up on 110th Street and First Avenue, and they reached out to us because they wanted some of our photographs. I said, oh, great, but they didn't want to compensate. And then what they did was create a mosaic inside where you can't really see it. So when you go there, there's really nothing that speaks about East Harlem.
So be considerate, basically.
Yeah, to be considerate, to be interested, considerate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want me to answer?
Oh, sure.
Oh, guys, my answer is really quick. So I think you should, I've already told this to my students, but make sure that you are working really well in your teams, that everybody has specific roles and that everyone knows what's going on and that you're all locked in on a shared vision. I think that's like really important so that you can actually organize, and whatever it actually ends up being, you actually do complete, right? Like that's something, it's nice that you're able to organize yourselves in a way to complete something. Then we can evaluate whether or not, okay, maybe it could have been tweaked this way or that way, but getting this thing done, it's a lot of organization. It takes some, what is it called? When you like spread out responsibility? Delegation. Yeah, thanks.
Also, just quickly want to invite you on May 1st. We're going to have a protest poster making activity at Art Space in preparation for the 6th annual Puerto Rican El Barrio Parade, which is separate from the Puerto Rican Day Parade. So you can get more information on that on our Instagram.
Thank you.
Stick around for a minute, everybody. Can you actually pull something up?
Oh my God.
Can you pull up the exercise?
I don't know if I can.
Let's see if you can, but no worries. Just very quickly, first of all, really want to thank again Marina and Anoushae. That was just a perfect talk for today, and as we all embark on the final of these 3 exercises,